I'm ready.
I'm ready. Good. Well, hello, everybody. We're having today ISPC. We're featuring Evan Meier, or Meier. He just finished. What is it?
Meier.
Meier. That's it. Meier.
Yeah.
Evan Meier. He just did his dissertation defense at the University of Maryland in composition, and today he's going to present to us some of his work. So, Evan, if you'd like to go ahead and take the camera and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing.
Sure. Okay, so I've written a chamber opera, a one-act chamber opera for, and the University of Maryland Opera Studio just read it back in February. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the origins of the opera and the musical basis. So the opera is about the Baader-Meinhof group, who were a group of terrorists living in Germany, and they were active in the late 1960s and early 1970s. And the story particularly focuses on one of the leaders of the group, Ulrike Meinhof. So I first got the idea to write an opera on this subject after seeing a film that came out a number of years ago called The Baader-Meinhof Complex, based on a book by Stefan Aust. I found the time period and the concept to be rather compelling. Ulrike Meinhof, in particular, was a fascinating character. She began her career as a journalist, and she was covering the left-wing student movement that was happening in Germany in the late 1960s. And yes, so she, after spending some time covering this movement as a journalist, she eventually decides to join this. Hold on one second.
Sure. Yeah, so I just sent the files for this presentation actually with Skype.
Sorry, just had a little interruption there.
Sure, that's fine.
Can we cut that out? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after spending some time covering the student movement in Germany, Ulrike makes a decision to go underground, to abandon her career, abandon her family, and join this terrorist group. Okay, and so I particularly wanted to focus on this aspect of her character when I wrote the opera, this personal transformation that happens when she goes underground with the group. And then eventually, after the members of the group have been captured by the government, they're put in prison, and Ulrike commits suicide in prison.
Wow.
So, yes. So the opera takes place the night Ulrike commits suicide in prison. Yeah. All right. So basically, in order to take this subject matter and shrink it down into an opera, we had to do a number of things. So I got a friend, Lucas Richmond, who's a writer living out in LA, and I got him, and we collaborated for a while and basically came up with a story. And the gist of it is that we decided that it would be a small character study that took place in Ulrike's prison cell, and it would also, the other members of the group would be there as well. So this included Andreas Baader, who was the actual leader of the group, and Gudrun Enslin, who was Baader's girlfriend and the second in command. And they were actually put all in the same cell block, and that's where the opera takes place. So, and I wanted this opera to take place in sort of a small space on a small stage, so that the psychological aspects of the drama could be brought to the forefront. So the prison setting and there's a lack of much action in the traditional sense, and it really allows us to get into Ulrike's head. So I thought that once we came up with these basic facts, we decided that an opera that would take place the night of her suicide would give the stories a sort of compelling psychological direction. So basically, the opera would hinge on the reason Ulrike decides to kill herself in prison. So we decided that there'd be two reasons: the growing fissure between her and the other members of the group, and her inability to accept the violent actions that the members of the group are carrying out. So we set up these other characters as foils to Ulrike. So Andreas...
Excuse me, Evan.
Yeah.
One question. How many other group members were there in the cell, did you say?
There's three.
Three, okay.
Yeah, so there's Ulrike, there's Andreas, who's the leader of the group, and he's a baritone. He acts as a foil to Ulrike, and he really embraces the bloodshed, the terrorist acts that the group was carrying out. And in a sense, the bloodshed is sort of the ultimate end for him, rather than sort of the high-minded ideals that Ulrike has. Gudrun is just sort of a shadow to Andreas. She agrees with him, but often presents his ideas with a sort of softer side. And then we decided that we needed a fourth character. So there are four characters total in the opera. And this fourth character is a lawyer. We've invented him, and he basically exists so that we could transform Ulrike's internal monologue into a dialogue. And this lawyer is there to represent Ulrike's worst fears and insecurities, and he ultimately helps bring about her to the conclusion that she has to commit suicide. So let me go on to talk a little bit about the music. Okay, so when searching for a way to represent this subject matter musically, I had to ask myself the question: what does left-wing music sound like? Because these are all, they were communists basically, and I think I had to capture the character of their ideas in the music as well, and it had to be specifically like a German left-wing music. I couldn't go with a Soviet model or anything like that. So I actually turned to one of the theatrical interests of the groups, and that's the playwright Bertolt Brecht. And Bertolt Brecht wrote a play called Die Maßnahme, which is about communist agents in China seeking to foment revolution. And basically the plot of this play is that a member of the group is too eager to help the people, right now. So they're meeting with the workers in China and trying to, build the basis for a revolution. But he cares about their immediate needs, and this endangers the long-term goals of the revolution. So the other members of the group decide to murder him, and the play was often denounced as a justification of totalitarianism. And it's actually one of the reasons why Bertolt Brecht was deported from the United States. Yet the members of the Baader-Meinhof group, the characters of my opera, quoted this play religiously, and they really took its message to heart. So let me say a couple more things about Die Maßnahme. It's called a Lehrstücke, which means a teaching piece, where the members of the audience participate and pose questions. And often a musical number will provide the answer to these questions. So the composer Hans Eisler wrote the music, so incidental music, and then he wrote a number of songs for the play as well. So this music by Hans Eisler is what I turn to for inspiration. So I quote three Eisler songs. One of them is the well-known Solidarity song. It's not from the play Die Maßnahme, but it's a Brecht-Eisler collaboration. I also quote two other songs from the opera, the Lob der illegalen Arbeit, which roughly translates to in praise of illegal work, and then also Andere die Welt, which is change the world. So these are quoted extensively throughout the opera. I'm just going to play a couple of these things on the piano here, and hopefully you'll get a sense of.
Is this from the sheet that you sent us?
The sheet I sent you guys has the leitmotif, so that's how I eventually got to. So the Eisler tunes are what I started with, and many of the leitmotifs in the opera are derived from the Eisler songs.
Okay.
So the Solidarity song, which pops up in the opera all over the place, is just this this tune right here. Okay. So I sort of reworked this tune as my Solidarity motive, which is on the sheet I gave you guys, and so that's towards the middle of the page, and I just have where it appears as a leitmotif in my opera. So this is the first appearance of the Solidarity motif in my opera, and notice I've harmonized it a little differently. And this comes back as a recurring theme in the opera. Another Eisler tune that I've quoted quite extensively is the Andere die Welt, and it starts with this long pedal at the beginning. Okay, and that's all I quote from that part of the song. But that eventually becomes Ulrike's motif, and you'll see on the same page where I quote this song. This is the closest I come to quoting it directly. You notice I've added a counter melody here as well.
Sounds like Bach, sounds like the Passion. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Interesting.
there's another section of this song that I also quote, and it's just this melody right here. Okay. And so the text right there is a sort of interesting bit, and the text there is Welche Niedrigkeit beginnst du nicht, die Niedrigkeit auszutilgen, which roughly translates to, what vile act would you not commit? Could you rid the earth of all vile acts? So it's sort of a justification of violence. And I put that into the opera, the first place it appears, and I've labeled it vile acts. It's on the second page of that list of leitmotifs where I have this business. So the next Eisler quotation, there's one more which is not on the page anywhere, but it's simply a melody, which is. And then there's a little ostinato figure that happens with that one as well that I used. And the text right there is basically translates to, it is good to wield the word in the class war, and it appears in the opera whenever the characters are talking about their how they present their struggle to the outside world. Okay. So some of these motives are almost totally transformed, so that the quotation from the Andere die Welt, this one, is basically becomes a motive that represents Ulrike. So at the very top of that handout I gave you guys, I have a version of it version of it in an aria she sings, and it's okay, and it's slightly modified there as well. And there are many transformations of that happen as Ulrika's character transforms. A couple of others, I'll just play them so you can get a sense of them. I modify the solidarity motive and put it in a very tonal context in the key of A major, and it's the motive that's called Lighting the Way. And this is a motive that comes about whenever Ulrika is thinking about Andreas and his leadership of the group. So I'll just play a little bit of it here. So it's a modified version of that solidarity motive. And then there's a couple of independent motives that aren't related to these Eisler songs. So the motive that represents Andreas, and it's just this business here. And there's also a motive that is put in to represent whenever Ulrika is disgusted with something that everybody says. So that's on the second page as well. And I'll try to play it. So just that 5-note little motive there. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's sort of the leitmotivic basis, and these run as a thread throughout the opera, and the leitmotifs are Wagnerian in that sense, that they will represent characters and ideas, and they transform as depending on the dramatic circumstances. Okay. And one last thing I'd like to talk about is the harmony that I use. And the harmony is also there, and it's linked to the characters and the actions in the drama as well. So I basically took these like symmetrical collections, like the hexatonic, the octatonic, and the whole tone, and they're almost never presented as a pure collection because that wouldn't be interesting, but many of the harmonies I use are derived from these. So the hexatonic is just the alternating half steps and minor thirds. This scale right here, and then the octatonic and the whole tone as well. So there are certain harmonic units that are sort of unfold over a large scale. So the first 30 measures of the piece or so are just using a single pitch collection, this one right here. And I can use that to develop a number of musical ideas. So one of them is Andreas's motive at the very beginning of the piece. And at the very end of the first, that collection returns, but it's reinterpreted, and I can get a very different sound out of it. So so I can use these harmonies and reinterpret them in different ways. Another thing that is pretty constant is the linking of the octatonic material to the solidarity motive. So this solidarity motive, I often pair it with these two major triads, a tritone apart, and that produces an octatonic sound. And if you put all those pitches together, that's an octatonic subset. And yeah, so there are a number of other tonal relationships. I don't know how useful it would be to get into great detail without you having the score in front of you. So basically, that's the broad outline of the dramatic and musical stuff that went into making this opera. So,
Evan, I have a few questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
What was the instrumentation that you decided on?
So the reading was just with piano, and as it is right now, it's just 4 singers with piano. There's one aria from the opera that I excerpted and scored for a chamber ensemble and that's with piano, cello, and percussion. That's been performed a couple of times.
Nice.
Yeah, in Switzerland at Music 11 last summer, and at Catholic University a couple months ago with the Great Noise Ensemble. Yeah, and I'm in the process of trying to get a full production of this opera, and in that case there would be a small chamber ensemble, close to a Piero ensemble with percussion.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of questions, basically.
Sure.
My first question was, what feedback did you get from singers? You know, were you surprised by some comments that you've received from them, or it was basically you kind of planned everything very well? I just want to ask you if on the path of this opera you received some surprises from singers, from players.
Not really from the singers. I very carefully planned all of their pitch cues, so they typically knew where to come in, even when it was very chromatic or dissonant. So usually we didn't have problems with them finding their pitches or anything like that. There were some issues with counting, but
As it is always, yes. That's interesting. Yeah. Is that your first opera, or did you have other attempts before that?
I attempted an opera a few years ago. I tried to set a Chekhov play.
Oh,
and,
interesting.
Yeah, just a short one-act Chekhov play, the Boar. But after I wrote a single scene, and I feel like it wasn't working, and then I needed to have an original libretto for the opera to really take off. So years later, I came up with this idea.
That's great. And in your opinion, what's the hardest thing about writing an opera in general?
The hardest thing, I mean, it's just considering the length of the piece. It's the longest thing I've ever written. It's nearly an hour in length, and trying to keep it interesting.
That's that's the hardest thing.
Yeah, it's very easy for you to just drag these things out, and that's death and operatic performance if you bore people.
How long did it take you to finish it from the time that you started?
I started it in April of last year, and I finished in November.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So it's only several months or so, right?
A few months,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
It was.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's great.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions for Evan?
So what's the next step now that you're facing with this opera?
Well, the next step is trying to find a company that will stage it. The performance we had was a concert performance. It was not staged. There was some staging, but they weren't off book. They were still reading the music. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So. Yeah. Just a question: why German? Why not English? Why? As I understand, the opera that you wrote is in German, right?
No. The text is in English.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense.
The subject matter is German.
It would be nice if University of Maryland would let you travel to East Germany, to collect maybe to feel the spirit of that land. Even now, maybe you could have kind of like be on the spot and get some ideas about this. It would be nice.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. Interesting.
Great.
So, Mike, do we have any other questions?
Good. Yeah. Any more questions? Anybody? No?
Okay.
Excellent. Well, Evan, thank you for your presentation and for sharing this with you. Please keep us posted with everything that you plan on doing with it and that you do with
Sure.
it. And if you can guide us to any recordings that you have, so that way we can maybe hear if you have any
Sure.
recordings, maybe share them on the
can,
website.
Yeah, I can send you clips, so you can post them on the website.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Alrighty.